Joe DiMaggio was at the peak of his career when his sister Maria was diagnosed with polio. She was only 16 years old, and the doctors said she would never walk again. Joe secretly quit baseball for 2 years to take care of her. He never told anyone the real reason he left. What Joe did for Maria will make you believe in the power of family love. March 15, 1948, San Francisco General Hospital. Joe DiMaggio sat beside his teenage sister's hospital bed, holding her paralyzed hand. The doctors had just delivered the devastating news. Maria would be wheelchair-bound for life. That's when Joe made the decision that would change both their lives forever. This is the story of Joe DiMaggio's greatest sacrifice, and how a famous baseball player chose family over fame when it mattered most. Joe DiMaggio came from a large Italian-American family in San Francisco. He was the 8th of 9 children born to Giuseppe and Rosalie DiMaggio. The DiMaggio family was poor. Joe's father worked as a fisherman, and his mother took care of the children and the household. When Joe became famous playing baseball for the New York Yankees, he was the family's main source of income. Joe sent money home every month to support his parents and younger siblings. Maria DiMaggio was Joe's youngest sister. She was born in 1932, making her 19 years younger than Joe. Maria was special to Joe because she was the baby of the family. Joe had helped raise her from the time she was born. Unlike Joe's other siblings, Maria was born when Joe was already playing professional baseball. This meant that Joe was able to provide for Maria in ways that his parents couldn't provide for him when he was young. Joe bought Maria beautiful clothes, paid for her to attend private school, and made sure she had everything she needed. Maria adored her famous big brother. She would tell all her friends at school about Joe's baseball games and keep newspaper clippings about his career. In return, Joe was fiercely protective of Maria. He saw her as his responsibility and wanted to give her the best life possible. By 1947, Joe was 32 years old, and at the height of his baseball career, he had already won 3 World Series championships with the Yankees and was considered one of the greatest players in the history of the game. Joe was earning more money than he had ever dreamed of as a child. He owned a beautiful house in New York, drove expensive cars, and was dating some of the most famous women in Hollywood. But Joe never forgot about his family in San Francisco. He visited them whenever he could and continued to send money home. In February 1948, Joe received a phone call that changed everything. Joe was at his home in New York when the phone rang. It was his mother, Rosalie. "Joe, you need to come home," Rosalie said. Her voice was shaking. "It's Maria. She's very sick." Joe could tell from his mother's tone that this was serious. "What's wrong with her?" Joe asked. "The doctors think it might be polio," Rosalie replied. "She can't move her legs." Joe felt his heart stop. Polio was one of the most feared diseases of the time. It killed some people and left others paralyzed for life. "I'm coming home right away," Joe said. "Don't let them do anything until I get there." Joe caught the first flight from New York to San Francisco. During the flight, he couldn't stop thinking about Maria. Joe remembered when Maria was learning to walk as a toddler. She would hold on to his finger and take tiny steps around the house. Joe thought about how Maria loved to dance. She had been taking ballet lessons and dreamed of becoming a professional dancer someday. The thought of Maria never walking again was unbearable to Joe. When Joe arrived at San Francisco General Hospital, he found his entire family gathered in the waiting room. Joe's parents looked older and more tired than he had ever seen them. His brothers and sisters were crying. "Where is she?" Joe asked. "She's in room 304, his mother said. "The doctors are with her now." Joe walked down the hospital corridor to Maria's room. Through the window, he could see his 16-year-old sister lying in bed, looking small and frightened. Joe knocked on the door and entered the room. Maria's face lit up when she saw him. "Joe," Maria said. "You came." "Of course I came," Joe replied. He sat down in the chair next to her bed and took her hand. "How are you feeling?" "I'm scared, Joe," Maria said. "I can't feel my legs. What if I never walk again?" Joe squeezed Maria's hand. "Don't think about that right now. The doctors are going to figure out how to help you." But Joe could see the fear in Maria's eyes. She was just a teenager, and her whole life had suddenly been turned upside down. Dr. William Patterson, Maria's doctor, came into the room to talk to Joe. "Mr. DiMaggio, I need to be honest with you about your sister's condition," Dr. Patterson said. Joe and Dr. Patterson stepped out into the hallway to talk privately. "Maria has polio," Dr. Patterson said. "The disease has affected her spinal cord. She has lost all feeling and movement in both legs. Can you fix it? Joe asked. Can you make her walk again? Dr. Patterson shook his head. I'm sorry, but the damage to her spinal cord is permanent. Maria will never walk again. Joe felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Are you sure? Isn't there some treatment, some surgery? We've done every test possible, Dr. Patterson replied. There's nothing we can do to restore the feeling in her legs. Joe leaned against the hospital wall, trying to process what he had just heard. What happens now? Joe asked. Maria will need extensive physical therapy to learn how to use a wheelchair and take care of herself, Dr. Patterson said. She'll also need emotional support to cope with this life change. How long will that take? Joe asked. At least 2 years of intensive rehabilitation, Dr. Patterson replied. And she'll need someone with her constantly during that time. Joe knew what Dr. Patterson was implying. Maria would need a family member to take care of her full time. Joe's parents were too old to handle the physical demands of caring for a disabled teenager. His other siblings had their own families and jobs. Joe realized that he was the only one in the family who had the time and resources to take care of Maria. But taking care of Maria would mean leaving baseball for at least 2 years. Joe would be walking away from his career during his prime years. Joe thought about what this decision would cost him. He would lose millions of dollars in salary. He would miss seasons that could have added to his legacy as one of the greatest players ever. But when Joe looked at Maria lying in that hospital bed, none of that mattered. Joe went back into Maria's room and sat down beside her. Maria, I need to tell you something, Joe said. What is it? Maria asked. I'm going to stay here and take care of you, Joe said, for as long as it takes. Maria started crying. But what about baseball? What about the Yankees? Baseball will be there when I get back, Joe replied. You're more important. I don't want you to give up your career for me, Maria said. I'm not giving it up, Joe said. I'm just taking a break. Family comes first. Joe made the phone call to Yankees management that night. I need to take an indefinite leave of absence, Joe told the team's general manager. How long are you talking about? The general manager asked. At least 2 years, Joe replied. Joe, you can't be serious. You're in your prime. These could be your best years. My family needs me, Joe said. This is not negotiable. Joe didn't tell the Yankees management the real reason he was leaving. He simply said he had personal family matters to attend to. The newspapers speculated about why Joe DiMaggio was suddenly taking a break from baseball. Some reporters suggested that Joe was having mental health problems. Others thought he was holding out for more money. None of them knew the truth about Maria. Joe moved back to his childhood home in San Francisco to take care of his sister. Every morning, Joe would wake up at 6 a.m. to help Maria with her morning routine. He would help her get dressed, eat breakfast, and get ready for physical therapy. 3 times a week, Joe would drive Maria to the hospital for physical therapy sessions. He would sit in the waiting room during her appointments and drive her home afterward. On the days when Maria didn't have therapy, Joe would work with her at home. He would help her practice using her wheelchair and do exercises to strengthen her upper body. Joe also helped Maria with her emotional recovery. The transition from being an active teenager to being confined to a wheelchair was devastating for Maria. Some days Maria would be so depressed that she wouldn't want to get out of bed. Joe would sit with her and talk to her until she felt better. I used to dream about being a dancer, Maria told Joe one day. Now I'll never even be able to walk. You can still have dreams, Joe said. They just might be different dreams now. Joe encouraged Maria to find new interests and hobbies that she could pursue from her wheelchair. Joe bought Maria art supplies and encouraged her to take up painting. He also hired a tutor to help her continue her education while she was recovering. Slowly, Maria began to find new purpose in her life. Meanwhile, Joe was struggling with his own challenges. Joe had been one of the most famous athletes in America. Now he was spending his days in obscurity, taking care of his sister. Joe missed playing baseball. He missed the excitement of competing at the highest level and the camaraderie of his teammates. Joe also worried about his financial future. He was spending his savings to support his family and pay for Maria's medical care. But every time Joe felt sorry for himself, he would look at Maria and remember why he was making this sacrifice. Joe's teammates and friends tried to convince him to come back to baseball. In the summer of 1948, Joe received a visit from Yankees manager Casey Stengel. Joe, the team needs you, Stengel said. We're having a tough season. You could make the difference. I can't leave Maria right now, Joe replied. She still needs me. Couldn't someone else take care of her? Stengel asked. You're wasting your prime years. Joe looked at Stengel with determination. There's nothing more important than family. Baseball is just a game. Stengel realized that Joe's mind was made up. But there's more to Joe and Maria's story that reveals the depth of their bond. During the 2 years Joe spent caring for Maria, he faced many challenges that tested his commitment. In the winter of 1948, Joe's own health began to suffer from the stress of being Maria's primary caregiver. Joe was getting only 3 or 4 hours of sleep each night. He would stay awake listening for Maria in case she needed help during the night. Joe also wasn't eating properly. He was so focused on making sure Maria had nutritious meals that he often forgot to feed himself. Joe's mother, Rosalie, became worried about her son's health. "Joe, you're killing yourself," Rosalie told him. "You need to take better care of yourself." "I'm fine, Mom," Joe replied. "Maria needs me." "Maria needs you healthy," Rosalie said. "If you get sick, who will take care of both of you?" Rosalie was right, but Joe couldn't bring himself to slow down. He felt responsible for every aspect of Maria's recovery. In February 1949, Joe collapsed from exhaustion while helping Maria with her physical therapy exercises. Joe woke up in the hospital with Maria holding his hand. "You scared me, Joe," Maria said. "The doctor said you haven't been sleeping or eating enough." Joe looked at his sister's worried face and realized that his health problems were causing her stress. "I'm sorry," Joe said. "I just want to make sure you have everything you need." "What I need is for my big brother to be healthy," Maria replied. "Promise me you'll take better care of yourself." Joe promised Maria that he would eat regular meals and get more sleep. From that point on, Joe made sure to maintain his own health while caring for his sister. Joe also faced financial pressures during his time away from baseball. Joe's savings were running out from paying for Maria's medical expenses and supporting his family. In the summer of 1949, Joe received an offer to make a commercial for a breakfast cereal company. The company was willing to pay Joe $50,000 for a single advertisement. $50,000 was a huge amount of money in 1949. It was enough to cover Maria's medical expenses for an entire year, but Joe turned down the offer because it would have required him to travel to New York for a week of filming. "I can't leave Maria for that long," Joe told his agent. "She's still having bad days when she needs me there." Joe's agent couldn't believe that Joe was turning down so much money. "Joe, this is financial security for your whole family," the agent said. "Surely Maria would understand." "It's not about whether Maria would understand," Joe replied. "It's about keeping my promise to be there for her." Joe continued to turn down lucrative offers throughout 1949 because they would have taken him away from Maria. Joe's dedication to his sister sometimes put strain on his other relationships. In 1948, Joe was dating a woman named Catherine who lived in New York. Catherine wanted Joe to return to New York. "I don't understand why you have to be the one taking care of your sister," Catherine told Joe. "My parents are too old," Joe explained, "and my other siblings have their own families." "But you're giving up your whole career," Catherine said. "Taking care of Maria is what makes me happy," Joe replied. Catherine ended their relationship after a few months. "Some people just don't understand what family means," Joe told Maria. "I'm sorry you lost your girlfriend because of me," Maria said. "If Catherine couldn't understand why I need to take care of my sister, then she wasn't the right person for me," Joe replied. Joe's sacrifice also affected his relationship with his teammates. Some of Joe's Yankees teammates thought he was making a mistake by leaving baseball for so long. In 1949, Yankees pitcher Whitey Ford visited Joe in San Francisco. "Joe, I think you're crazy," Ford said. "You're wasting the best years of your life." "I'm not wasting anything," Joe replied. "I'm investing in something more important than baseball." "But you could be making history," Ford said. "You could be setting records that last forever." Joe looked at Maria, who was painting a picture at her easel across the room. "I am making history," Joe said. "I'm making sure my sister knows she's loved and supported. That's more important than any record." Ford watched Maria painting and began to understand why Joe had made his choice. "She seems like a special kid," Ford said. "She's the most special person I know," Joe replied. Joe's commitment to Maria inspired other members of his family to be more supportive as well. Joe's brother Dom, who also played professional baseball, began visiting Maria more often. "Joe's sacrifice made me realize that I wasn't doing enough to help," Dom said. If Joe could give up his whole career, the least I could do was visit more often. Joe's parents also became more involved in Maria's care after seeing how dedicated Joe was. Giuseppe, Joe's father, built a wheelchair ramp for the family home so that Maria could move around more easily. Rosalie learned how to cook special meals that would help Maria maintain her strength for physical therapy. The entire DiMaggio family rallied around Maria because of Joe's example. Joe's final years were spent surrounded by family, including Maria and her children. When Joe died in 1999, Maria was at his bedside. "Thank you for everything, Joe," Maria whispered as she held his hand. "Thank you for showing me what love looks like." At Joe's funeral, Maria gave a speech about her brother's sacrifice. "Joe taught me that the strongest people are those who help others become strong," Maria said. "He gave up 2 years of his career to give me a lifetime of independence." Maria concluded her speech with words that captured Joe's character. "My brother was a champion on the baseball field, but he was a hero in real life. He showed me that true greatness comes from putting others before yourself." The crowd at Joe's funeral gave Maria a standing ovation. Joe DiMaggio's decision to leave baseball to care for his sister Maria remains one of the most powerful examples of family love in sports history. Joe proved that championships and statistics are temporary, but the impact we have on the people we love lasts forever. Maria lived for 4 more years after Joe's death, and she spent those years telling everyone about her brother's sacrifice. "Joe saved my life in every way possible," Maria would say. "He showed me that I was worth fighting for." Maria's strength and independence, which lasted for over 50 years after her polio diagnosis, was Joe's greatest achievement. Joe DiMaggio will always be remembered as one of baseball's greatest players, but those who knew the full story remember him as one of life's greatest brothers. If this story of family sacrifice and unconditional love moved you, subscribe for more untold stories of how heroes are made, not by fame but by the love we show when no one is watching. Like this video if you believe Joe's choice to care for Maria was his greatest victory, and comment below, would you give up your dreams to help someone you love? Next week we're revealing another story of how true character is tested when we must choose between personal glory and family duty. Remember, the greatest champions are not always found on the field, sometimes they're found in quiet moments of sacrifice, showing us that love is the most powerful force of all.